Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. This is an extra episode for the weekend. There's been so much to cover that I'm putting this out today. Hopefully, we'll then be on top of everything as we move into what will likely be another busy week from Monday. Let's jump in. And first up, the release of the Trump administration's new National Security Strategy, NSS, has sparked some close examination in China's foreign policy circles. One widely discussed analysis comes from Meng Weijian, a researcher at Fudan University's Institute for Advanced Study in Social Sciences, whose recent essay, translated by state media commentator Fred Gao, offers a revealing window into how many within China's strategic community view Washington's latest posture. Meng argues that although the NSS adopts a notably softer tone than previous iterations, this should not be mistaken for moderation or retreat. Instead, he contends the US is transitioning from high-cost ideological confrontation, as he puts it, toward a more sustainable, long-term strategy rooted in realist competition. He likens this shift to the classical Chinese thinker Han Feizi, who emphasized strengthening internal capabilities over winning external allies. In Meng's view, the new NSS places the primary battleground not in military confrontation, but in economics, technology, and industrial capacity, a form of what he calls technological Machiavellianism, designed to secure enduring structural advantages. A key element, Meng warns, is the strategy's attempt to consolidate what he says, cultural civilizational coalition among Western nations while simultaneously rebuilding America's own economic and technological foundations. He draws comparisons between Trump's current rhetoric and Nixon's strategy of temporary retrenchment, a pullback meant not to disengage but to regroup for a generational contest. The underlying objective, he argues, is to constrain China's rise through persistent, lower-cost pressure that can be sustained for decades. Meng's recommendation for China is equally direct. Avoid being lulled by a softer rhetoric, focus on domestic development, accelerate innovation, and prepare for a prolonged strategic competition defined not by dramatic confrontations, but by long-run capability building. Meanwhile, speculation over a potential shift in US policy toward Taiwan has been firmly dismissed by the White House following close scrutiny of wording in the Trump administration's newly released NSS, National Security Strategy. A slight change in language from opposing to not supporting any unilateral change to the status quo in the Taiwan Strait sparked debate among analysts, but a senior White House official told Just the News, an outlet in the US, there was, quote, no change to US policy regarding Taiwan. End quote. The NSS states that the United States will, quote, maintain our long-standing declaratory policy on Taiwan, end quote. Language the administration insists is fully consistent with the US One China policy practiced under the US president's first term. The official emphasized that executive branch engagement with both sides of the Taiwan Strait remains unchanged. As one observer noted, any genuine policy shift would be likely to appear in a presidential announcement than in a formal strategy document. Recent legislation further reinforces continuity rather than change. The 2026 National Defense Authorization Act expands U.S.-Taiwan cooperation, particularly in uncrewed and anti-uncrewed systems, medical supply coordination, and joint Coast Guard training. These measures build on existing strategic ties rather than redefining Washington's stance on Taiwan's political status. At the same time, the NDAA deepens efforts to counter China across multiple fronts, from restricting U.S. government dealings with Chinese biotech firms to expanding intelligence and diplomatic programs focused on Beijing's global influence. Next up, we move to the Chinese economy. A financial asset exchange in eastern China, one of the wealthier parts of the country, has frozen withdrawals on investment products worth more than 20 billion yuan, $2.8 billion US dollars, leaving close to 10,000 investors unable to access their funds and underscoring persistent risks in the country's massive shadow banking system, particularly at the local level. The disruption centers on the Zhejiang Financial Assets Exchange, where investors said problems first emerged in late November. Users reported missing transaction records and delayed maturity payments on the exchange's app. By the 28th of November, all withdrawal functions had been suspended. according to multiple investors speaking to Chinese financial media outlet Caixin. The situation prompted hundreds of investors to gather to protest this week at the Shaoxing headquarters of Sun River Holdings Group Co. Limited, a major user of funds raised through the exchange and a credit enhancement provider for some of the affected products. However, the meeting ended without a clear repayment plan. Sun River acknowledged financial stress, with an executive telling investors the group holds roughly 60 billion yuan in assets against more than 40 billion yuan in liabilities, resulting in cash flow pressure. The episode has also hit related companies' market valuations. 3 listed Sun River affiliates said that they bear no guarantee obligations, yet their shares have declined in recent trading sessions. Many investors had viewed the products as relatively safe, citing the exchange's early state-backed shareholders and a long record of smooth redemptions. Incredibly, confidence largely held even after regulators revoked the exchange's trading license in October of 2024, as authorities said existing contracts would remain valid. Concerns have since grown that some products were backed by receivables linked to Sun River-related entities, raising questions over asset quality and related party financing, not just with this firm, but across the wider sector. This is one institute in a relatively wealthy part of the country, affecting 10,000 people. If issues spread systemically, it would likely mutate into a catastrophic crisis across the country's financial system. Next up, China has conducted the maiden flight of what is being hailed as the world's largest drone mothership, marking a significant leap in its rapidly advancing unmanned aerial warfare capabilities. The Jiutian, named after the term for the 9 heavens in Chinese mythology, completed its first mission in Shanxi province, according to state-run Xinhua, underscoring Beijing's ambition to deploy sophisticated platforms capable of launching weaponized drone swarms. Unveiled last year at Zhuhai Air Show, the Jiutian functions as an airborne aircraft carrier. The drone can hold up to 6 tons of payload and features 8 hardpoints for guided bombs, air-to-air and anti-ship missiles, as well as loitering munitions designed for kamikaze-style strikes. Its cavernous belly can also release more than 100 small drones simultaneously, a tactic increasingly seen as key to overwhelming modern air defenses. Analysts note, however, that Jiutian's size may limit its stealth on the battlefield. The debut comes as China accelerates investments in unmanned systems, from next-generation amphibious assault ships to the advanced combat drones showcased by General Secretary Xi Jinping during a recent military parade. Yet these technological strides unfold against the backdrop of sweeping military purges amid concerns over corruption affecting weapons quality. Jiutian, built by state-owned Xi'an Shida Aircraft Parts Manufacturing Co., will undergo further testing before entering service with the People's Liberation Army. Next up, we have one more development to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode, it's a huge help if you can just hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you want to continue to be on top of updates like these, and Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description for those who want to help keep China Update financially sustainable. And finally for today, we continue our ongoing coverage of what is now several weeks of escalating Japan-China tensions. The United States has publicly reaffirmed its support for Japan amid rising tensions with China, following most recently a dangerous radar lock incident involving military aircraft, signaling a clear alignment with Tokyo. Late Thursday, a U.S. State Department spokesperson criticized Beijing's actions, saying they were, quote, not conducive to regional peace and stability, end quote, and emphasized that the U.S.-Japan alliance is, quote, stronger and more united than ever, end quote. The spokesperson added that Washington's commitment to Japan remains unwavering and that the two sides are in close contact over the incident and broader regional security issues. It marked the first time the United States has directly criticized China over the radar episode. As we covered earlier this week, Japan had accused a Chinese fighter jet of locking its fire control radar onto Japanese aircraft over international waters during a training exercise on Sunday, an act widely regarded as very hostile and dangerous because it typically precedes a weapons engagement. That is worth stressing. If accurate from the Japanese perspective, they are in a position where they may be fired upon and need to act. It goes without saying that such behavior is very reckless, as it greatly heightens the risk of miscalculation, an accident, and even escalation. Beijing, however, has blamed Japan, claiming its aircraft interfered with Chinese air training. At China's regular foreign ministry briefing, a spokesperson reiterated that China's exercises were lawful and conducted safely, avoiding direct comment on the US criticism and offering no indication of de-escalation. Japanese officials welcomed Washington's stance. The chief cabinet secretary said the remarks demonstrated the strength of the US-Japan alliance, while the defense minister argued that China's prior notification of the exercises lacked critical details, including timing and location, making it impossible to avoid what he described as a dangerous situation. The political messaging has been reinforced by military signaling. This week, 2 US Air Force B-52 bombers, capable of carrying nuclear weapons, conducted a joint exercise over the Sea of Japan with Japanese F-35 and F-15 fighter jets. Japan's joint staff said the drill reaffirmed the alliance's resolve not to tolerate unilateral changes to the status quo by force, and underscored the readiness and deterrence capabilities of both militaries. The show of force followed a phone call between the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and his counterpart in Japan, Koizumi, in which both ministers expressed, quote, grave concern, end quote, that China's actions were heightening regional tensions. They agreed to maintain close communication and plan an in-person meeting early next year. Despite these developments, there are still no visible signs of an off-ramp. China has not addressed US criticism directly, and Tokyo has signaled it will continue vigilant air and maritime surveillance. For now, Washington's clear backing of Japan, both rhetorically and militarily, adds weight to Tokyo's position, reassures regional allies, and sends an unmistakable message to Beijing as tensions in the Asia-Pacific continue to simmer. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Saturday, have a restful weekend, and I hope to see you for a new week of updates on Monday.